We'll ask everybody please to find your seats, to power down your cell phones, put them away, make sure all cell phone technology is away. Closer. In a historical time of true turbulence, and certainly echoing the support that Rabbi Hardstark mentioned and the attention that we need to pay to Israel and the world and global affairs, perhaps we can think of no greater blessing than the remarkable ability and gift it is to live in the United States of America in a time where freedom should not be taken for granted, and those brave men and women who fight for our freedoms and our protection, our safety, both here and abroad, do so for us so that we can have the gifts of this country to be proud Jewish men and women who contribute and who also benefit tremendously. It's not often that we bring the whole school together, and yet on a day like today, Veterans Day, we feel compelled to take a moment out of our busy day and schedule to recognize and to celebrate. I'm not going to give too much introduction. You'll hear a lot today, this morning. But I do want to take one very brief moment to recognize two students, Leah Narenberg and Nate Katz, who have taken it upon themselves pretty much independently, with a little bit of grown-up support, to make this entire program happen for you. Leah and Nate, we applaud you, and we're very appreciative to you for making this program happen, and we honor you and are very proud of you as well. Please stand as the choir sings the national anthem, the Star Spangled Banner, and please do join along.
Good morning, Boker Tov. It is an honor for me to be here. Thank you. I am Joshua Landis, an SAR parent and board member. I am the proud father of Ariel Landis, who has warned me not to embarrass her today. I want to thank Rabbi Hardstark, Dr. Shinar, Beverly Wolfer, Leah Nerenberg, Nate Katz, and Dahlia Goldbrenner for organizing today's program. Thank God, in this generation, you as committed Jews are proud of and aware of the state of Israel with its strong military in which our brothers and sisters serve. On Veterans Day, of course, it is most appropriate to acknowledge Jewish military contributions to our great country, America. Did you know that the second graduate of West Point in 1802, Mr. Levy, was a Jew? That 4 buildings at Annapolis, the Naval Academy, are named for Jews? That there have been more than 100 Jewish admirals and generals in U.S. history, including, only in the last 25 years, a Jewish head of the Navy, the Air Force, the National Guard, our Special Forces, and the second in command or assistant commandant of the Marine Corps. A special man and a very proud Jew. A man I am proud to call my friend, Admiral Herman Shelanski. Admiral Shelanski will be formally introduced by Leah Nerenberg shortly. Just know that Mayor de Blasio wanted to see him today, but he chose to be here with us. Remember Fleet Week in New York City? 2.5 years ago, he led it. On Friday night, November 21st, the Jewish Chapel at West Point will be conducting Erev Shabbat services as part of Jewish Warrior Weekend. This is an annual event where Jewish cadets and midshipmen from each of the service academies, Army, Navy, Air Force, Coast Guard, and Merchant Marine, spend a weekend together at West Point, participating in a program of activities coordinated by the West Point Jewish Chaplain. This year, the guest speaker at services will be Admiral Shelanski, U.S. Navy, former commander of the aircraft carrier USS Harry S. Truman and Carrier Strike Group 10. In conclusion, I think today of my own father of blessed memory, a veteran, an admiral who passed away this past Pesach. I and my family had the zechut, the honor, to be involved in producing 10,000 of these sidurim, which are used by the 10,000 American service people all over the world. The dedication reads as follows. In honor of a great American Jewish leader, my teacher, my role model, my father, Rabbi Aaron Landis, Rear Admiral, Chaplains Corps, United States Navy, in honor of the hundreds of thousands of American Jews who have served since 1776 in the armed forces of the United States of America, and the tens of thousands of American Jews who have died fighting for our country. Leah, please come forward.
Good morning. Today, we are so honored to have Rear Admiral Shelanski as our keynote speaker for the 3rd Annual Veterans Day program. He has served in the Navy for over 30 years on both land and sea. He commanded the Carrier Strike Group 10, consisting of 15 ships and over 8,000 sailors. In 2009, Rear Admiral Shelanski, as commander of the USS Truman, installed an Aron and a Torah on the ship. He has since led an effort to supply all aircraft carriers with Torah scrolls. Most recently, Rear Admiral Shelanski served as the Senior Military Advisor to the Deputy Secretary of Defense. Please join me in welcoming Rear Admiral Shelanski and give him your undivided attention.
Well, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here today, an honor to be here. So Leah and Nate, thanks from everyone here at the SAR that put this together, Josh especially, and our friendship. Thank you for inviting me. It's a great honor. Let's start out with a little bit of a video here. Just over a year and a half ago, I left as the commander of Carrier Strike Group 10. Now, this was a unique moment for me and a culmination of over 30 years in the naval service. Up to that point, I had commanded an aircraft squadron, a command ship, an aircraft carrier, the USS Harry S. Truman, and now the strike group, where I had over 60 tactical jets, cruisers, destroyers, frigates, where I was responsible for over $10 billion worth of equipment, yearly operational costs over $100 million, and most importantly, for the responsibility and the safety of over 8,000 sailors. You have to picture here a large airport, a big ship, a hangar bay with thousands of sailors, a Navy band, aircraft parked, 500 guests. I was in my dress blues like today with my medals, white gloves, very formal ceremony. I even had my sword at my side. Feeling very proud after all these years of accomplishment in the Navy. And on the way up to the dais for my change of command, I walked past my mother, who was sitting in the front row next to the Admiral. And she was beaming with pride, as all Jewish mothers do. And she said to the Admiral, "You see my boy Herm? He's magnificent. His sister-in-law is a very successful doctor." So I'm very humbled to be here today, especially on this day, Veterans Day. You know, the veterans of Valley Forge gave us our country, gave us our country the freedom it has today. But for more than 2 centuries now, veterans all over have preserved that country that was won in battle. Today, America is the freest, the strongest, and the proudest nation on earth. But unfortunately, there is no vacation from war. We must constantly battle new threats to freedom and battle new evils all over the world. Today, American veterans on active duty serve our country all over the world. Right now, we're on the ground in Afghanistan, back in Iraq, in Europe, Asia, on every ocean and sea of the world, every day of the year and every hour of the day. Veterans Day today is a time to honor American veterans, those soldiers, sailors, Marines, airmen, Coast Guardsmen, reservists from all wars for their patriotism their love of country, and willingness to serve and sacrifice for the common good. I hope in a very humble way to represent them all today, and I'll be somewhat parochial because I'm going to tell you some sea stories from my career as a Jewish naval officer. Now, historically, our armed forces have always had a large Jewish presence, 5% of an ethnic group in every major war the United States has fought. For instance, over 200 years ago, during the War of 1812, there was a particular noteworthy Jew by the name of Uriah P. Levy. He is my favorite naval hero, and I feel a real kinship to him. First, we have our ties to Philadelphia. We have a connection of proud Jewish heritage, and we have our unified love of adventure and service that, in my humble opinion, can only be found at sea in the United States Navy. My sentiments are summed up by a quote from Uriah Levy. He said, "My parents were Israelites, and I was nurtured in the way of my ancestors. I am an American, a sailor, and a Jew." Uriah Levy's family left Spain in 1492 to escape the Spanish Inquisition, and they made their home first in the Caribbean and then in America. He was the son of a merchant, and at the age of 12, left to become a cabin boy on a merchant ship. And similar to the surge of volunteers that happened here in our country after the terrible events on 9/11, he also answered his call for his country in 1812 and went to sea as a junior officer. His ship bravely fought against England, and though he was captured and spent some of the years of the war in prison, Uriah advanced in his career as a naval officer. But at that time, as a Jew, he had to fight immense prejudice. 5 times he was brought up on false charges and had to go face a court-martial, a legal board of officers. And 5 times he was found not guilty. He even fought duels for his honor and survived 3 of them. Now, this may have deterred many men from remaining in the Navy, but he loved the Navy, and more importantly, he loved his country. And he persevered until he rose to the highest rank of his time, which was the Commodore, the equivalent of today's Admiral. He commanded the Mediterranean fleet and defeated the Barbary pirates. But his contribution to the Navy and our nation went above his warfighting and sailing skills. He lived up to the teachings of Torah because he fought a reluctant bureaucracy in the Navy. He personally changed the Navy to eliminate corporal punishment of sailors. So in those days, when a sailor would get into trouble, they were punished with what they called a cat-o'-nine tails, which was basically a knotted rope, and the sailors were whipped, disfiguring them, maiming them, and often killing them. He was the first to make that change in the United States Navy. Now, unlike Uriah Levy, I can say I never really did experience outright prejudice throughout my career. I really attribute this to the great military and Navy that we serve in. The military has been our country's leader when it comes to equality. The first organization to desegregate was the military, and this was due to President Harry S. Truman's presidential order. Today, it's an organization where anyone can excel based on their own skills and determination, and not where they were born, the color of their skin, or whether they wear a kippah. So I realized the moment that I joined the Navy when I went through Aviation Officer Candidate School in Pensacola, Florida, and met this man, Gunnery Sergeant Buck Welcher, United States Marine Corps, who called out for all the Jews in the class to take one step forward. I was the only one that took that step, and I realized that much of my career was going to be sort of representative in the Navy for Judaism. I did that by traveling around the world with port calls in the Philippines, Japan, Australia, Dubai, Ireland, Bahrain, and all over in over 50 countries and all the seas and oceans of the world except for the Arctic. I visited ancient synagogues, the oldest one in Americas, as you see here in Curacao. I got to explore a 2,000-year-old mikveh uncovered deep below a hotel in Syracuse, Italy. I met with Jews in the Philippines and prayed with those with an Irish brogue in Ireland. I've attended an official military ceremony at Yad Vashem to lay a wreath in memory of the Holocaust. I sat Shiva for a Jewish Iraqi family living in Bahrain that needed a minyan. Prayed at sea for every Friday night during 9 months of deployment in our small chapel underneath the flight deck, with crash of airplanes interrupting at regular intervals. Lit Hanukkah candles during a hurricane at sea where over 60-foot waves were breaking over the bow of the ship. Hosted a Passover Seder for the whole ship in the Arabian Gulf during a break in the war with hundreds of sailors, Jews and non-Jews. And watching my admiral, not a Jew, insisting on drinking all 4 glasses of wine to the last drop because he was determined to follow the instructions in the Haggadah. And that's, of course, on a U.S. Navy ship where no alcohol is allowed except for religious ceremonies. And then dedicating a Torah on board 2 aircraft carriers. The first was a Holocaust Torah for the USS Ronald Reagan just after we commissioned the ship. And the second one when I was in command of the USS Harry S. Truman. Remember from your history, it was President Truman who, despite contrary advice from his cabinet and closest advisors, was the first head of state of the world to recognize Israel. Because of that, Truman received a Torah as a gift for that historical moment. And that Torah is now on display at the Truman Library in Independence, Missouri. It was a small family Torah that came from Lithuania. So in honor of the 60th anniversary of the birth of Israel, we had that Torah from Independence flown to my ship to sit side by side during the dedication of our new Torah, which you see here. The new Torah was also from Lithuania, and it was not a new Torah. It was a Holocaust Torah, saved from destruction from the Nazis, collected from the Nazis, and sent to a warehouse in Prague to be used later as an exhibit in a museum to be called the Extinct Race of the Jews. Luckily for us, this storehouse was saved from the destruction of the war, and at the end and the fall of the Soviet Union, these artifacts, Torahs and other memorabilia were saved, and some restored, like the one now on the Truman. All of this was restored under a program called Our Precious Legacy. One gentleman, Mr. Mark Talisman from Maryland, was instrumental in making this happen. This Torah was purchased by the Tidewater Jewish Foundation and loaned to the ship for the rest of the life of the ship of 40 years. And we use this occasion to educate the crew on the Holocaust and tell the story of the role the U.S. Armed Forces had in ending the war and stopping the Holocaust. It also helps strengthen the bonds with us and the understanding of our citizens on the unique and important role our sailors play in history. Now, historically, today's Navy traces its ethos from the War of 1812, where we emerged a nation with a spirit of winning. And it was the Navy that started its first victories underway. And it started with technology and with extraordinary sailors. In 1812, we went to war with Britain because our sailors were being forced into service and our economy was threatened. But no different than 1812, we are today a seafaring nation, and we have an economy that depends on the ocean commerce. 70% of the world is covered by the oceans. 80% of the people of the world live near the coasts, and 90% of our trade travels on those oceans. The Navy's mission is to respond to our nation's threats, to influence events in faraway locations, to protect us at home, protect our economy by keeping the flow of goods moving, and preventing war, or being able to respond to events instantly. The first thing the President always asks in a crisis is, where are our aircraft carriers? We can do all these things from the sea without the permission of other countries to operate within their borders. Just months ago, and continuing today, Navy strike fighter aircraft from the aircraft carrier USS George Bush conducted strikes against terrorist troops from the Islamic State of Iraq with the support of Tomahawk strikes into Syria from our cruisers and destroyers. Being there matters. We're also present and run to the scene when disaster strikes. We provide immediate humanitarian assistance to our global neighbors in the wake of disaster, ferrying supplies, medicine, and trained medical personnel ashore from Navy ships, from helicopters, and landing craft. We were there for the relief in Haiti, the nuclear disaster in Japan at Fukushima, and the typhoon in the Philippines. Being there matters. It all boils down to a simple fact: when it comes to protecting America, being there matters. And today, right now, America's Navy, your Navy, is already there. And our success historically and in today's world is based on two pillars. The first is technology. Back in 1812, we had only 6 ships. They were called frigates. These ships were designed and built in America, and they were the technological wonders of the world at the time. They were designed with longer water lines, making them faster than any British ship on the seas. They were more stable and able to carry more cannon of a heavier ball. They were built with American oak, the strongest wood in the world, so strong that when the USS Constitution fought the British, their cannonballs bounced off the side of the ship, making the sailors remark that it was made of iron and earning the nickname Old Ironsides. Now, down the eastern seaboard today at the Norfolk Naval Station, you can catch sight of today's Navy's technological wonder, the largest warship in the world, the nuclear-powered aircraft carrier. Over 60,000 tons of steel and 1 million pounds of aluminum were used in its construction. It is 1,096 feet long and has a width of 251 feet. It has 4.5 acres of a flight deck, or more than 3 lengths the size of a football field. It is roughly the same size as the Empire State Building. It has 4 huge elevators that can lift a 40,000-pound aircraft from the hangar deck for the launch, 60 tactical airplanes with the capability to go up against and beat over 98% of the world's air forces in the world. And we have 11 of these aircraft carriers. Underneath the flight deck is a self-contained city. The daily newspaper, radio and television station, fire department, library, hospital, general store, 2 barbershops, a post office with its own zip code. There are over 4,000 rooms. Down at the deepest depths of the ship are 2 nuclear reactors heating water to superheated steam that drive 4 21-foot propellers, each weighing 66,700 pounds each, getting ready to move a 100,000-ton ship at speeds over 30 miles per hour. It is steered by 2 immense rudders, which measure 29 by 22 feet and weigh 50 tons each, that cut through the water, allowing the ship to turn in a surprisingly small radius. Now, these material parts of the carrier are what will awe and amaze you as you first walk down the pier and then when you step aboard this ship, until you look around and see that the carrier is really a city of 5,000-plus sailors. In the War of 1812, the pinnacle of success then was that our ships were run by master sailors like Uriah Levy and fearless captains, crew, and volunteers. Today, our men and women, like the volunteers back then, are still the secret weapon in America's arsenal. On the aircraft carrier, the ease that the aircraft will launch and recover on the flight deck as the ship powers through the water is the result of the professional and tenacious dedication of these young sailors. On the flight deck, with the deck pitching in the heavy seas or out in the pouring rain or blinding sandstorms in the Gulf, temperatures that reach 120 degrees or -10 in the northern Pacific, our sailors are out there launching and recovering aircraft. We fly anywhere, anytime, day or night. It's a dangerous occupation as the jets revs up his engines to afterburner so as not to get blown overboard, or to carefully maneuver around the deck so as not to run into the silent and deadly propellers. Designated by the Lloyds of London, an insurance firm, as the most dangerous job in the world. The average age of sailors that move and launch these $60 million airplanes under these dangerous conditions is 21. And the flight deck is only the tip of the iceberg. The carrier never sleeps. It's alive 24 hours a day, Below decks, the rest of the crew is working around the clock. There are mess specialists who are baking hundreds of thousands of rolls, 3,000 pies for the crews. Engineers are fixing leaking water pipes, electricians redirecting power to higher loads. There are doctors, dentists, capping teeth, lawyers, firemen, electricians, pay clerks, chaplains, aircraft and ship maintenance men, watchstanders, line handlers, quartermasters, air traffic controllers, and more, all working to make the ship function. Every sailor contributing positively to accomplishing the mission. And who are these gallant men and women? Their answer is these veterans are just like yourselves. These men and women come from all over the 50 states and U.S. territories. They are Caucasian, African American, Asian American, Latino, Hispanic, Catholic, Protestant, Baptist, and yes, they are Jewish. Some of them are kids looking for careers or on-the-job training, some to escape a hometown of crime or poverty, and some trying to get a college education. But most of them are answering a call to service. In Israel, Israelis defend their nation on the mandatory service in the IDF. In the United States, our servicemen and women are all volunteers. We look back on our history and see that no other nation has for so long or has so strongly protected their freedoms, including, of course, the right to worship as we please, and to feel the sense of patriotism and duty to continue to protect these freedoms is what these sailors do. And they do this from 7 to 9 months straight on deployment, away from their homes, their family, and their loved ones. And that doesn't take into account the time that they use out at sea practicing, or the duty days that they have to serve away from their family in port. You can believe me when I tell you that these sailors earn their pay. So let me pause for a second and have someone else tell you a story of our recent Navy birthday to give you an idea of some of what they do.
For 239 years, the United States Navy has patrolled the world's oceans, protecting and defending America. For 239 years, the Navy has deployed, serving America around the world, around the clock. For 239 years, the Navy has carried out its charge as the shield of the Republic, upholding the core values of honor, courage, and commitment. And for 239 years, the Navy has stood the watch. The Navy couldn't do this without the selfless service of the families, volunteers, and dedicated organizations that support our Navy, allowing them to stay focused on the mission as they stand their watch. But the watch isn't just on the bridge. The watch is stood at home, by loved ones when a sailor is deployed, by workers in warehouses ensuring delivery of beans and bullets, and in companies pledging jobs to reservists and veterans. The watch is stood in the airport, at homecomings, at morale-boosting events, and quietly behind the scenes as volunteers give relief and support in times of need. And the watch continues after the homecoming for veterans, wounded warriors, and their caregivers. This extended Navy family is vital to continuing the forward presence and power projection of the U.S. Navy and sailors worldwide. So on this 239th birthday, we thank you for joining the Navy family. Happy birthday. Go Navy!
Finish with one last story about our sailors. It took place on a visit to the USS Harry S. Truman when I was the captain. We were visited by an admiral of the Chinese Navy, Admiral Wu. Today, this admiral has been promoted to the admiral in charge of the entire Chinese Navy. He came to our ship with his delegation of senior officers. We were told to give them access to everything that was unclassified, and it was an effort to improve our relationships with China, to be open and to be honest with them. So besides a tour, we decided we'd give them an air power demonstration. And they asked, of course, 1,000 pictures, 1,000 questions, and took 1,000 pictures. But at the end of it, we had a special dinner where the admiral sat down and we talked to him about the day's events. And he talked first and he said, you know, we have the ability, and now we have the money to build a ship like this, to build an aircraft carrier. Yes, we replied, we believe you can, and probably will. But then the admiral said, but what I don't understand, looking around this room filled with my sailors and officers, said, what I don't understand is how you do this. And after the translation, we understood what he was asking is, how do we make... They trained diligently, both physically and mentally, so they would be prepared to prevail in any mission they face. They can be called upon at a moment's notice to perform a risky and perilous job. They are well led by our chief petty officers and commissioned officers. But most of all, the patriotism, the self-sacrifice, and devotion of our young Americans are a unique consequence of growing up in a free and democratic country guided by a constitution. And with all due respect, sir, that is something you will never have. And so today, the USS Harry S. Truman is getting ready to go out to sea again. Who knows what will be needed? Sailing in harm's way in the Middle East or other parts of the world. Sailing with the men and women of our nation and the spirit of the veterans who served before them and whom we honor today on Veterans Day. Sailing with them is a Torah that was supposed to be displayed in the Nazi Museum of the extinct race of Jews, an exhibit to represent the evil of the time. But now, in an ironic twist of fate, the sailing with the greatest veterans in the most powerful ship in the world, within the most powerful Navy in the world, for freedom and peace around the world. Thank you.
Thank you to Rear Admiral Shelanski for that wonderful presentation. We're incredibly honored to hear from a hero like you. At this time, I would like to call upon Shabi Kestenbaum and Yaira Kobrin to say Misha Berachs for the American government and military, and Sophie Heck to recite a short essay about the true meaning of Veterans Day. Please rise for these Misha Berachs.
Team Shuala Makim Umem Shala Lansichim, Maputro Machu Kolamim, Hapuzet Lirdum Erev Anotain beyond their Pumai Mazinativa, Kuiberech Vishmorvim Sorvia Azor, the Roman of Vigadavina Say, Lemala Etanasi, Get Vishnu Viako Soria Aretz Azot, Mel Machem Achim, Barachamavitain Bilibam, Ulay Poetsay Amasari Ham, Lasso Tava Imanu Vim Kol Yisrael. B'mehem u'b'meinu tivashay Yehuda, V'Yisrael yishkol nevetach u'valitzon Yoel, v'chein yiratzon v'nomar Amen.
God on high, who dwells in might, the King to whom peace belongs, look down from your holy habitation and bless the soldiers of the American military forces who risk their lives for the sake of peace on earth. Be their shelter and stronghold, and let them not falter. Give them the strength and courage to thwart the plans of the enemy and end the rule of evil. May their enemies be scattered and their foes flee before them. Bring them back safely to their homes and grant us true peace in fulfillment of the prophecy. Nation shall not lift up sword against another nation, nor shall they learn war anymore. Let all inhabitants on earth know that sovereignty is yours, and your name inspires awe over all you have created. May this be your will, and let us say Amen.
Vic Tracker from Jacksonville, Illinois, joined the U.S. Marine Corps when she was 17 years old. One day, during training on Parris Island in South Carolina, she was asked to raise the American flag for everyone on the island. She wrote the following story to explain how special that one day was in her life. My greatest moment of personal pride in my country came the day I was chosen to raise the American flag for the whole of Parris Island. It was early dawn and the sky was a brilliant pink. As I placed my hands upon that sacred piece of material so reverently referred to as Old Glory, I felt as if time had come to a halt. My hands trembled as I clipped that hallowed piece of silk to the yardarm. I felt as if I was personally raising that flag for every American in our country. When the flag reached the top and the wind unfurled its brilliant beauty to the morning sky, I thought my heart would burst with pride, and at that moment I knew I was fighting for each and every one of those people, and that they were not strangers at all, but fellow Americans who believed in the same country I did. Today we live under the umbrella of freedom that our military provides. We go to bed and wake up in a free America every day because of a soldier we may never meet. We love that anonymous soldier because he has made a promise that he will work his hardest to ensure that on his watch, nothing will happen to us. This soldier tells us that even though the ultimate price of freedom may indeed be the loss of his own life, he is determined in his heart that it is not too high of a price to pay for the freedom of a country he loves.
As the program concludes, we would like to thank Rear Admiral Shelanski for sharing his incredible experiences, the choir for their beautiful rendition of the Star Spangled Banner, and our fellow students who participated. We would also like to thank Mr. Landis, Dr. Shinar, and the administration for assisting us in planning this important program for the third year in a row.
Last but not least, thank you for being such a great audience. We hope you benefit from hearing all that was said, and we are so glad that this Veterans Day has been spent honoring all of our brave troops who fought for our country and our freedoms.
Thank you again to Nate and to Leah, and a tremendous yasher koach to Admiral Shelanski for sharing your story and your wisdom with us. Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, we are now going to dismiss to first period.